Alright, let me paint you a picture. May 2024. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The most elite, most exclusive, most ridiculously glamorous red carpet event on planet Earth, the Met Gala. Celebrities, designers, supermodels, Hollywood royalty, everyone's there. And for the first time in history, a full K-pop group walks that carpet together. 8 members. 8 custom Tommy Hilfiger suits. Stray Kids just made history, and they haven't even taken their coats off yet. But here's the thing nobody expected. While cameras were flashing and the world was watching, voices from behind those lenses started saying things that no one should ever have to hear. Mocking tones. Racial slurs disguised as jokes. A Japanese word thrown at a Korean group like it didn't matter. Robots, they called them. Unemotional. One photographer literally told them to jump, like they were entertainers on command, not global ambassadors of $1 billion fashion house. And that was just the beginning. Because what happened after that night? What happened when Vogue erased a member's name from a caption? When a brand secretly auctioned off their worn clothes behind their backs? When the fashion industry kept testing every single one of these 8 men? Well, Stay didn't stay silent. And neither did the members. So here's the question. What happens when one of the most powerful fandoms in the world goes to war with the fashion elite? Which member became the ultimate proof that respect isn't given, it's taken? Who shut down an entire red carpet just by standing still? And which moment turned a humiliating insult into a global movement? You're about to find out. This is the countdown. 8 members, 8 moments, 8 battles the fashion world never saw coming. Let's get into it. Number 8. Hyunjin. The prince who made Versace bow first, not the other way around. Picture this. May 2023. The French Riviera. Cannes, the land of cinema royalty, champagne on yachts, and red carpets so exclusive that even A-list Hollywood actors have to wait for an invitation. Versace, the Italian fashion empire built on gold Medusa heads and audacious glamour, is hosting something massive, a one-night-only fashion show called La Vacanza, a collaboration between none other than Donatella Versace herself and global pop superstar Dua Lipa. The guest list reads like a who's who of Western entertainment: Troye Sivan, Manu Rios, fashion editors from every continent. And then right there, walking into that venue with the kind of quiet confidence that makes people stop mid-conversation, is a 23-year-old K-pop idol from Seoul named Hwang Hyunjin. Now, let's be real for a second. At that point in time, the Western fashion elite didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat for K-pop artists. Sure, a handful had broken through, BTS at Louis Vuitton, Blackpink members scattered across Chanel and Dior. But the unspoken truth? A lot of people in that world still saw K-pop idols as marketing tools. Walking billboards. Pretty faces to slap on a campaign, collect the engagement numbers, and move on. They weren't taken seriously as fashion figures. They weren't treated as people who understood fabric, silhouette, or artistic expression. And Hyunjin? He wasn't even the most internationally famous member of Stray Kids at that point. Felix had the Louis Vuitton deal. Bang Chan had the global name recognition. So when Hyunjin showed up in Cannes wearing a refined beige-toned outfit with black accents, elegant, understated, deliberately not trying too hard, a lot of industry people probably thought it was just another idol photo op. Another K-pop star attends fashion show, headline that would trend for 12 hours and disappear. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Because what happened next didn't just change Hyunjin's career, it shifted the entire conversation about what it means when a luxury house chooses an Asian artist as its face. Donatella Versace didn't just notice Hyunjin that night. She gravitated toward him. Photos from the event show them in close conversation, Donatella's hand on his shoulder, the kind of body language you don't fake for press coverage. Within weeks, the fashion world got the announcement. Hyunjin was named Versace's first ever Korean global brand ambassador. July 2023. Official. Sealed. And Donatella's public statement? It wasn't the usual corporate PR fluff about exciting new partnerships. She called him a true Versace man. She said he embodied confidence and freedom of expression. She praised his great new energy and creativity. This is Donatella Versace we're talking about, the woman who took over one of the most iconic fashion houses in history after the murder of her brother Johnny, who built it back up with her bare hands, who has dressed every supermodel from Naomi Campbell to Gigi Hadid. And she's calling a K-pop idol from JYP Entertainment her prince. Let that sink in. But here's where the story gets deeper and, honestly, more emotional than most people realize. Because Hyunjin didn't just become a Versace ambassador and coast. He showed up. Repeatedly. Relentlessly. When Milan Fashion Week rolled around, he wasn't just sitting in the front row looking pretty, he was the front row. Fashion media started writing headlines that weren't about stray kids or K-pop at all. They were about him. His outfits became subjects of instant viral analysis. Every ring, every layered accessory, every intentional styling choice dissected by fashion forums from Seoul to Paris. The Versace Prince nickname didn't come from fans alone. Fashion journalists started using it. And then, in August 2024, something extraordinary happened. Hyunjin flew to Milan and walked into the Palazzo Versace, the actual house where the brand creates its collections, for a private fitting with Donatella. Not for a campaign. Not for a magazine shoot. For custom-designed stage outfits for Stray Kids World Tour. Think about that. A fashion house worth billions personally tailoring performance wear for a K-pop group's concert tour. That doesn't happen. That had never happened at that level. Donatella was designing pieces specifically for how Hyunjin moves on stage, considering the choreography, the sweat, the way fabric catches light under arena spotlights. This wasn't a transactional endorsement deal anymore. This was artistic collaboration between equals. And meanwhile, the same industry that had been skeptical was watching. The same photographers who would later yell robots and arigato at stray kids on the Met Gala carpet were operating in a world where Hyunjin was already being dressed by Donatella Versace herself. The irony is almost poetic. Because by the time 2024 turned into 2025, Hyunjin wasn't just a Versace man. He was a Cartier ambassador, announced in September 2024, with the luxury jewelry house positioning him alongside their most prestigious high jewelry collections. Then came Givenchy Beauty in early 2025, making him a global ambassador for one of the most storied beauty brands in French fashion. Then Guess Jeans in 2026. For major luxury brands. For completely different aesthetics, Versace's bold maximalism, Cartier's timeless elegance, Givenchy's Parisian sophistication, Guess's American cool. And Hyunjin didn't just attach his name to them. He shaped how they marketed to an entire generation. Products sold out after his promotions. Campaign images featuring him generated engagement numbers that made traditional celebrity endorsements look quaint. He was ranked among the top 100 global fashion icons by The Global Choice in 2024. But the reason Hyunjin sits at number 8 on this list isn't just because of the accolades. It's because of what his story represents in the bigger picture of this countdown. He's the proof of concept. He's the member who walked into a room full of people who didn't believe a K-pop idol could be a genuine fashion force, and made the most powerful woman in Italian fashion call him her prince. Before the Met Gala humiliation. Before the Vogue snub. Before any of the uglier moments we're about to get into. Hyunjin had already planted the flag. He'd already shown that stray kids didn't need the fashion world's permission to belong in it. And that's exactly what makes the disrespect that came later so much more infuriating, because by the time those photographers opened their mouths, the industry had already crowned one of their own. They just weren't paying attention. But if you think Hyunjin's silent takeover of the luxury world was impressive, wait until you hear what happened when another member got erased, literally wiped from existence, by one of the biggest fashion publications on the planet, and the internet absolutely lost its mind. Number 7. Felix. The freckled boy from Sydney who made Louis Vuitton's runway his red carpet revenge. Let's rewind to something most people don't talk about enough. Before the Louis Vuitton campaigns. Before the Paris runway. Before the $9.1 million media impact numbers and the sold-out collections, there was a kid from Sydney, Australia, with sun-kissed freckles scattered across his cheeks like constellations. A voice so impossibly deep it didn't match his angelic face, and a dream that took him 8,000 kilometers from home to a JYP Entertainment trainee dorm in Seoul, South Korea. Felix Lee, born Lee Yobok, grew up speaking English in a suburban Australian household with Korean immigrant parents. He wasn't groomed in the K-pop pipeline from childhood like some idols. He auditioned, got in, flew across the world, and then, in one of the most emotionally devastating moments in K-pop survival show history, got eliminated from the Stray Kids formation lineup for his Korean language skills. Eliminated. Sent home. Told he wasn't ready. Imagine that. Imagine being 17, alone in a foreign country, told your Korean isn't good enough, and wondering if the dream is already over. He came back, obviously. JYP brought him back because the group felt incomplete without him, because even back then, there was something magnetic about Felix that transcended language barriers. That magnetism? It didn't just save his career. Years later, it would make one of the most powerful men in French fashion look at him across a crowded room in Seoul and say, "That's the one." That man was Nicolas Ghesquière, artistic director of Louis Vuitton's women's collections. The creative genius who revived the house after Marc Jacobs departed. The designer who has dressed Cate Blanchett, Emma Stone, Léa Seydoux, the absolute elite of Hollywood elegance. And in early 2023, when Ghesquière brought Louis Vuitton's pre-fall collection to Seoul for a special showcase, he saw Felix in person for the first time. In his own words, it instantly clicked. He praised Felix's energy, his unique personality, and what he called an audacious sense of style. Not a polite corporate compliment. Not a throwaway quote for a press release. Ghesquière was describing the exact thing that the fashion establishment has historically refused to see in K-pop idols, genuine artistic identity. By August 22, 2023, Felix was officially announced as a Louis Vuitton house ambassador. Not a friend of the house. Not a one-season campaign face. A house ambassador, a title that Louis Vuitton reserves for the very few individuals it considers permanent extensions of the brand's identity. The fashion press took notice, but here's the thing about the fashion press. They notice and then they test. They acknowledge you and then they wait to see if you'll stumble. They want to know if you're a real presence or just a pretty face with a good agent. And Felix? He didn't stumble. He did the opposite of stumble. He walked a runway. March 5, 2024. The Cour Carré du Louvre, the courtyard of the Louvre Museum in Paris, one of the most iconic cultural landmarks on Earth. Louis Vuitton's Women's Fall-Winter 2024 show, a celebration of Nicolas Ghesquière's 10th anniversary as artistic director. And out walks Felix. Platinum blonde hair catching the light. A striking silver-themed ensemble with layered textures that made photographers lean forward in their seats. He strode down that runway with the kind of quiet authority that takes most professional models years to develop, and he did it alongside young Ho-yeon, the Squid Game actress who is herself a former fashion model. They closed the show together. Side by side. Let that image sit in your mind for a second. A freckled kid from Sydney who almost got kicked out of a K-pop survival show is now closing a Louis Vuitton runway at the Louvre. That's not just a career milestone. That's a narrative so cinematic it would get rejected from a Hollywood screenplay for being too unrealistic. And the numbers backed up the emotion. Felix's runway debut generated approximately $9.1 million in media impact value. That's roughly 25% of the entire show's total media coverage. One person. 25% of the entire conversation about a Louis Vuitton show at the Louvre. When he had appeared in the front row at a previous Paris Fashion Week show, he had already generated $6.6 million in MIV just by sitting there. Just by sitting there. His total earned media value for Louis Vuitton reportedly exceeded $120 million over the course of his ambassadorship. Products he wore or promoted experienced rapid sellouts. The Felix effect became an actual term used in fashion marketing circles, referring to the measurable commercial spike that occurs whenever his name is attached to a luxury item. And then came the Met Gala. May 2024. Felix standing on that red carpet alongside 7 of his brothers in matching Tommy Hilfiger customs, hearing photographers call them robots and unemotional. Hearing the word arigato hurled at a group of Korean men by people who couldn't be bothered to learn the difference between Korean and Japanese. Felix, who grew up Australian, who speaks perfect English, who understood every single word those photographers were saying, standing there, absorbing it all, not flinching, not reacting, not giving them the satisfaction of seeing it land. Think about the cognitive dissonance of that moment. This is a man who closed a runway at the Louvre 2 months earlier. A man whose presence at a fashion show is worth $9 million in media impact. A man whom Nicolas Ghesquière, one of the most respected creative minds in fashion history, personally handpicked as his muse. And nameless, faceless photographers on a red carpet are calling him a robot. They're telling him to jump. They're mocking his nationality with the wrong language. The gap between how the fashion elite behind closed doors treated Felix and how the media machinery on the ground treated him that night is one of the most damning indictments of the industry's hypocrisy you'll ever see. And what did Felix do after the Met Gala? He went right back to work. He walked the Louis Vuitton runway again for Fall-Winter 2025. He collaborated with the brand on the Silver Locket 2025 collection, a partnership with UNICEF that raised $4 million for children's programs in just 6 months. $4 million. For children. While the photographers who mocked him were busy setting their Instagram accounts to private because Stay had found them. He attended the Louis Vuitton Cruise 2026 show in Avignon, France, sitting in the front row like he'd been there his entire life. He met Pharrell Williams, the men's creative director of Louis Vuitton, at a brand event in Hong Kong, exchanged phone numbers, and discussed making music together. Pharrell Williams. The man who produced Happy. The man behind Neptunes. Swapping contacts with the freckled boy from Sydney. And perhaps the most telling detail of all, when Felix appeared alongside Lee Know at the Tommy Hilfiger show during NYFW in September 2024, Vogue Business posted footage of the event and captioned it with the names of Blackpink's Jisoo and Felix, while completely erasing Lee Know from the text despite him being visibly present in the same video. The fashion media didn't just disrespect Stray Kids once. They did it again and again, in ways both loud and quiet, as if daring Stay to keep watching. Felix's position at number 7 isn't just about his achievements, though those achievements alone could fill an entire documentary. It's about the emotional weight of watching someone who was once told he wasn't enough, who was almost sent home before his career even started, rise so high that the very industry that mocked his group on camera now depends on his face to sell $120 million worth of attention. He didn't fight back with words. He fought back with presence. With numbers. With the quiet, devastating fact that Louis Vuitton's runway at the Louvre was 25% about him. But here's what's wild. If Felix's story is about proving skeptics wrong with commercial dominance, the next member on this list took a completely different approach. Because when Stay's leader spoke up about the Met Gala disrespect, he didn't let the numbers do the talking. He used his own voice, and what he said shook the entire fandom to its core. Number 6. Bang Chan. The shield who clapped once and told the whole red carpet the conversation was over. There's a moment from the 2024 Met Gala that most people have seen, but few truly understand. It lasts maybe 3 seconds. It's not a speech. It's not a dramatic exit. It's not even a facial expression. It's a clap. A single, sharp, rhythmic clap of the hands. Bang Chan, leader of Stray Kids, standing at the front of his group on the most scrutinized red carpet on earth, bringing his palms together not to applaud, but to signal. To communicate. To say, without opening his mouth, we're done here. Follow me. Let's go. In those 3 seconds, Christopher Bang, born in Seoul, raised in Sydney, trained for nearly 8 years in a JYP entertainment practice room where he watched GOT7, Twice, and Day 6 all debut before him while he was still waiting. Did something that no amount of screaming, no angry tweet, no strongly worded press statement could have accomplished. He ended the conversation. On his terms. Not theirs. That's the thing about Bang Chan that makes him different from every other leader in K-pop right now. He doesn't react. He redirects. And to understand why that moment carries so much emotional weight, you have to understand the man behind the clap, because his backstory isn't just impressive. It's borderline punishing. Bang Chan moved from Sydney to Seoul in 2011. He was 13 years old. Alone. No family with him. Dropped into a trainee system designed to push teenagers beyond their limits, vocally, physically, mentally, with zero guarantee that any of it would lead anywhere. Most K-pop trainees last 2, maybe 3 years before they either debut or get cut. Bang Chan lasted 7. 7 years of watching his peers get called up while he stayed behind. 7 years of practicing in mirrored rooms until the sun came up. 7 years of being told, in 100 different quiet ways, not yet. Most people would have broken. Most people would have gone home to Sydney, enrolled in university, and tried to forget the whole thing. But Bang Chan didn't break. He built. While waiting for his own chance, he started producing music. He formed 3RACHA, a production unit with fellow trainees Han and Changbin, and began writing the songs that would eventually define Stray Kids' sound. And when JYP finally gave him the green light to form a group, he didn't just accept whoever the company assigned to him. He picked the members himself. Personally. He chose Hyunjin. He chose Felix. He chose Lino, Seungmin, I.N, Han, and Changbin. He built the group from his own vision, like an architect designing a building he'd been blueprinting in his head for 7 years. That's the leader who was standing on that Met Gala carpet in May 2024 when photographers started calling his members robots. That's the man who heard someone yell arigato at a group of Korean men and didn't flinch. That's the person who was listening in perfect, fluent English, because he grew up in Australia and understood every syllable, as strangers with cameras mocked his brothers on the biggest fashion stage in the world. And what did he do? He clapped. He turned. He led them out. No anger visible. No bitterness in his stride. Just the calm, controlled movement of someone who has spent his entire career protecting these 7 people, not with fists, not with words, but with presence. Fans call him the father figure of Stray Kids, and it's not a joke. He's the member who catches falling props during performances. He's the one who positions himself between the group and the crowd in airports. He's the leader who has used his weekly broadcast, Chan's Room, to talk openly about the pressures of idol life, about the loneliness of training, about the weight of being responsible for 7 other people's dreams, about the fundamental importance of respect as a two-way street. When he spoke candidly on Chan's Room in May 2023 about being disappointed when fellow idols didn't return his greetings, saying, "I feel like it's come to the point where greeting someone is not considered basic manners." The comment blew up so massively that it sparked an industry-wide debate about respect culture in K-pop. He apologized publicly afterward, clarifying he wasn't targeting anyone. But the message was clear. Christopher Bang does not tolerate disrespect. Not toward others and not toward his group. The irony? That Chan's Room controversy happened exactly 1 year before the Met Gala. 1 year before the industry proved his point in the most public, most humiliating way possible. And what makes his Met Gala response so devastating is precisely what it wasn't. It wasn't a scene. It wasn't a confrontation. It was leadership distilled to its purest form, the ability to absorb hostility on behalf of 7 people and convert it into a silent, dignified exit that said more than any rage-fueled outburst ever could. The fashion world noticed. Not the photographers, they were too busy being identified by Stay and watching their social media accounts burn, but the actual fashion houses. The people who matter. Because just 7 months after the Met Gala, in January 2025, Fendi, the 100-year-old Italian luxury house, celebrating its centennial anniversary, officially named Bang Chan as their brand ambassador. This wasn't a consolation prize. Fendi had been watching. Bang Chan had attended their men's spring-summer 2025 runway show in Milan in June 2024 as a front-row guest, and his appearance alone generated $3.43 million in earned media value. He showed up wearing a vibrant yellow Fendi tank top with tailored black pleated trousers and a dramatic open trench coat, and the fashion press couldn't stop writing about it. He sat alongside Nicholas Galitzine and Ren Magiro, actors and global influencers, and held his own. Not because he was the loudest. Because he was the most magnetic. That's always been the Bang Chan paradox. He's the group's producer. The creative engine. The person who has co-written and co-produced nearly every single Stray Kids song in their entire discography. He's not supposed to be the fashion member. That's Hyunjin's lane. That's Felix's territory. But here he is, a Fendi ambassador wearing custom pieces for the Dominate World Tour, appearing at iDays Milano and BST Hyde Park in London as both a music headliner and a fashion icon, attending multiple Fendi runway shows across seasons, evolving his personal style from versatile streetwear to sharp, polished tailoring that fashion critics describe as main character energy with effortless cool. The campaign visuals for his ambassadorship announcement featured him in a head-to-toe Fendi SS25 look, a striped knit with a Fendi crest patch, a shirt and tie, stitched jacquard shorts, 4 sneakers, and the brand's iconic baguette and peekaboo bags. The boy who trained alone in a practice room for 7 years was now the face of a century-old fashion empire. And he did it all while carrying the emotional burden of being the first line of defense for 7 other people in a world that had shown, on live camera, that it wasn't always going to be kind to them. That clap on the Met Gala carpet? Stay turned it into a meme. They turned it into fan art. They turned it into a rallying cry. But the truth is simpler and more powerful than any meme could capture. In that moment, Bang Chan wasn't performing leadership. He was doing what he's done every single day since he picked those 7 members out of a JYP practice room. He was choosing them, protecting them, telling them, without a single word, I've got you. We're leaving. And we're coming back stronger. Fendi heard that message too. And they put a 100-year-old brand behind it. But if Bang Chan's response to the Met Gala was defined by what he didn't say, the next member's story is about something far more painful. Being right there in the same room as everyone else and having the world's biggest fashion publication act like you simply didn't exist. Number 5, Lee No, the man Vogue erased from a caption, who then walked into Gucci's front row like he owned it. September 8, 2024. New York City. A decommissioned Staten Island ferry has been transformed into a floating runway for Tommy Hilfiger's Spring/Summer 2025 collection, one of the most talked about venue choices of New York Fashion Week that year. The guest list is stacked. In the front row sits Blackpink's Jisoo. Beside her, Stray Kids' Felix, already a Louis Vuitton house ambassador with a runway debut at the Louvre under his belt. And right there, literally inches away, shoulder practically touching Felix's shoulder, sits Lee No. Lee Min-ho. Stray Kids' main dancer. The man who was a backup dancer for BTS on the Wings tour before he ever became an idol himself. The member who completed JYP Entertainment's entire advanced dance training course in 2 weeks, the fastest in the company's history. A man with 30 million Instagram followers who was, at that exact moment, trending globally for his outfit, a sharp, preppy ensemble that fans immediately dubbed the college crush look. He's right there. On camera. Visible. Undeniable. And then Vogue Business posts the video. The caption reads, Jisoo and Felix at Tommy Hilfiger. That's it. That's the whole caption. Lee No visible in the frame, sitting right next to Felix, attending the same show as the same brand's ambassador, simply doesn't exist in the text. His name isn't there. No tag. No mention. Nothing. As if someone at one of the most prestigious fashion publications on the planet looked at the footage, saw 3 globally famous faces, and decided consciously or unconsciously that 2 of them mattered and 1 of them didn't. Now, let's talk about why this particular erasure cuts so deep. Because it's not like Lee No is some unknown entity who happened to wander into a fashion show. This is a man with one of the most extraordinary origin stories in the entire K-pop industry. Born in Gimpo, South Korea, Lee No didn't grow up dreaming of being an idol. He grew up dancing. He discovered dance in middle school after watching a video online, and something clicked inside him so profoundly that he spent the next 5 years at Seoul Dance Studio in Seoul, training obsessively, building himself into the kind of technical dancer who moves with such precision that it looks effortless, which anyone who actually dances will tell you is the hardest illusion to create. By his mid-teens, he was already working professionally. He joined dance crews like Cupcakes and Brownie Bros, and then, in what might be the most surreal line on any idol's resume, he became a backup dancer for BTS. Not a trainee at their company. Not a fan who got lucky. A hired professional dancer for the biggest boy band on earth, performing on the Wings tour alongside Fire, Not Today, and Spring Day. He was on those stages. He was behind those spotlights. And nobody knew his name. He auditioned for JYP Entertainment in 2015 and then heard nothing. Absolute silence. For 2 years. Most people would have assumed the rejection was final and moved on with their lives. Lee No waited. And in 2017, JYP finally called him back. He joined the company on July 15, 2017, and was immediately placed into the survival show that would form Stray Kids. But here's the cruel twist. Even after all that waiting, all that patience, all that silent perseverance, he got eliminated. Episode 4. Cut from the lineup because the show's judges felt he lacked confidence during his performance. Eliminated alongside Felix, the same Felix he would sit next to at that Tommy Hilfiger show 7 years later, the same Felix whose name Vogue would remember while forgetting his. JYP brought them both back in episode 9, giving them one final chance. The 9 members performed together in the live final mission, and Park Jin-young, the founder of the entire company, decided the group was only complete as 9. Lee No stayed. He debuted on March 25, 2018. And he spent the next 6 years becoming arguably the most technically gifted performer in 4th-generation K-pop. A dancer with a black belt in Taekwondo. An ambidextrous idol who can write with both hands. A man whose personality is so fascinatingly contradictory that fans call him a tsundere, cold on the surface, fiercely warm underneath. The member who cooks for the group like a second mother. The cat butler who goes home to Cindy, Donggi, and Dory and transforms from one of K-pop's most intense stage performers into a man who baby talks his cats on Instagram Live. This is the person Vogue business decided wasn't worth naming. Let that contradiction marinate. And here's what makes this story so much more powerful than a simple caption oversight. Because the fashion world's refusal to see Lee No didn't start at NYFW. It was baked into the industry's initial perception of Stray Kids as a whole. When the group first started attending fashion events, the narrative was always centered around the same 2 or 3 members, Hyunjin at Versace, Felix at Louis Vuitton, maybe Bang Chan if the outlet remembered he existed. The other members were treated as accessories. Background. Supporting cast. And Lee No, despite being one of the most visually striking members of the group, described by fashion media as having sculpture-like features and an unreachable visual, was consistently overlooked by Western publications that couldn't be bothered to learn 8 names. The Vogue business incident was just the loudest example of a pattern that had been building for years. Stay erupted. They flooded the comments. They trended hashtags demanding Lee No's recognition. They shared every photo, every fan cam, every angle that proved he was right there and that ignoring him was a choice, not an accident. But here's the part that transforms this from an angry fandom moment into something genuinely cinematic. Because while Vogue business was busy not learning his name, someone else was watching. Someone who understood exactly what Lee No represented. For months before that NYFW snub, in May 2024, Lee No had quietly attended the Gucci Cruise 2025 fashion show at the Tate Modern in London. His very first runway show appearance. He walked in wearing a tailored Gucci monogram wool suit with an extra long tie and platform horse-bit loafers, a look so meticulously styled, so deliberately unconventional, that W magazine ran a feature on it. He was photographed alongside Paul Mescal, Dua Lipa, Salma Hayek, and Mark Ronson. Not in the background. Not as a +1. As an invited guest of equal standing. And the fashion press that actually bothered to pay attention described him as sculpture-like. They used phrases like new generation icon. They recognized what Vogue business had been too careless or too dismissive to see. On June 30th, 2025, Gucci made it official. Lino was named a global brand ambassador. The luxury house praised his individuality and artistic spirit, calling his energy and versatility a perfect match for the brand's evolving creative vision. Lino responded with the kind of statement that only someone who has waited his entire life, waited 2 years after an audition, waited through an elimination, waited through years of being the unnamed member in Western fashion coverage, could deliver. He said, "I believe Gucci is a brand that transcends the past and present through heritage and contemporary creativity. It's a great honor to be part of Gucci's visionary journey." Read that again. Transcends the past and present. He's not just talking about Gucci. He's talking about himself, the backup dancer who stood behind BTS, the eliminated trainee who came back, the erased name who refused to disappear. By February 2026, Lino was in Milan. Not for a vacation. For Milan Fashion Week. The Gucci Fall/Winter 2026-2027 show. He arrived at Incheon Airport in a black Gucci jacket with subtle monogram details that sent fashion forums into overdrive. When he landed in Milan, a massive crowd of fans was waiting. Vogue France, not Vogue Business, but the actual French Vogue, ran a feature calling him a new generation icon. The same media ecosystem that had once left his name out of a caption was now writing entire profiles about him. That's not just a comeback. That's a correction. The fashion world didn't just learn Lino's name, it started printing it in headlines. And the irony? It was the erasure that made the comeback hit so hard. Because if Vogue Business had simply typed Lino in that September 2024 caption, his Gucci ambassadorship might have felt like a natural progression. Instead, it felt like a declaration of war, a man the industry tried to make invisible, proving that he was, in fact, impossible to ignore. But if Lino's story is about being erased and then rewritten into the narrative by sheer force of presence, the next member's story goes even darker. Because what happens when the disrespect isn't a caption or a photographer, it's a brand you trusted, secretly selling the clothes off your back without your knowledge, and making money from the intimacy of your own sweat. Number 4. Changbin, the brand that sold his clothes behind his back, thought he'd never find out. April 9, 2024. Tokyo, Japan. A fan signing event called Stay Bloom with SLBS, Meet SKZ, has just wrapped up. The 8 members of Stray Kids have smiled, signed albums, made hearts with their hands, and left the venue. JYP Entertainment staff have packed up. The lights are dimming. And that's when SLBS, the mobile accessory brand that had a lucrative collaboration deal with the group, did something so brazen, so violating, so breathtakingly shameless that when fans pieced it together 48 hours later, the internet caught fire. After the members left, SLBS representatives quietly gathered items that had been worn by the Stray Kids members during promotional photo shoots, jackets, sweaters, tank tops, pants, and held a secret, unauthorized auction. Right there. In the same venue where the members had just been sitting. No announcement. No permission from JYP Entertainment. No consent from a single member. They just took the clothes, put them on display, and started selling them to the fans who were still lingering. Prices ranged from 50,000 yen to 100,000 yen, roughly $330 to $650 per item. And here's the detail that makes your stomach turn. SLBS staff reportedly encouraged buyers to keep quiet about the auction. They told fans the clothing still smelled like the members' perfume. They commodified the physical intimacy of these men, their sweat, their scent, their bodies, without their knowledge, without their permission, and marketed it as a selling point. Let that settle in for a moment. Because this isn't just a scandal. This is a violation dressed up as a business transaction. And for Changbin, Changbin, born August 11th, 1999, Stray Kids' ferocious rapper, elite producer, 1/3 of the legendary production unit 3 Racha. This betrayal hit a frequency that resonated far beyond a corporate mishap. Because Changbin's entire career has been built on one principle: authenticity. Raw, unfiltered, take it or leave it authenticity. This is a man who writes lyrics about inner struggle, self-doubt, and finding power in the places the world tells you to hide. Under his stage name Spurb, he uploaded self-produced tracks to SoundCloud before Stray Kids even existed, before anybody knew who he was, before any algorithm cared about his name. He didn't wait for permission to be an artist. He just created. And that creative independence, that refusal to let anyone else define his narrative, has been the through line of everything he's done since. When 3RACHA formed in 2017 with Bang Chan and Han, they weren't a company project. They were three trainees who decided they weren't going to wait for JYP to give them songs. They wrote their own. They produced their own. They built an entire musical identity from a dorm room and a SoundCloud account, and that identity became the backbone of Stray Kids' entire discography. Changbin isn't just a rapper in the group. He's a full member of the Korea Music Copyright Association, KOMCA. He has production credits on tracks for ID's Y. He shapes the sound that millions of people consume. The man creates. That's what he does. Now imagine being that person. Someone who pours his identity into every verse, every beat, every bar, and discovering that a brand you collaborated with took the literal clothing off your back and auctioned it to strangers for profit. Imagine learning that the tank top you wore for a photo shoot, the jacket you pulled on during a promotional video, was sold to someone who was told it still smelled like your perfume. The violation isn't just financial. It's existential. It's someone taking the physical artifact of your work, the garment that touched your skin while you were performing, creating, being yourself, and turning it into a commodity you never agreed to sell. That's not a brand partnership gone wrong. That's a boundary crossed so severely that it borders on the predatory. Stay went to war. The backlash was nuclear. Fans flooded every SLBS platform with demands for accountability. Within days, SLBS issued a formal apology on Twitter, April 11, 2024, admitting they had sold the clothing without JYP Entertainment's consent. They confirmed they had retrieved the items and issued full refunds. And fans noticed something telling in the weeks that followed. Every Stray Kids member suddenly stopped using SLBS branded phone cases in public. Apple products started reappearing in their hands. The collaboration, for all intents and purposes, was dead. But here's where Changbin's individual story within this larger betrayal becomes genuinely profound. Because while the SLBS scandal exposed the fashion industry's willingness to exploit idols as products rather than people, it also highlighted a painful truth about Changbin's position within the group's fashion narrative. For years, Changbin was the member fans discussed least when it came to fashion. Hyunjin had Versace. Felix had Louis Vuitton. Bang Chan had the growing Fendi relationship. Lee No was building his path to Gucci. Seungmin had Burberry, I.N had Bottega Veneta. And Changbin? Changbin had his own style. His streetwear roots. His signature layering of hoodies and chains and beanies. His legendary physique, Gymracha, fans call him, because the man's arms look like they were sculpted by Michelangelo after a protein shake. But no luxury house had come calling. Not in 2023. Not in 2024. Not in 2025. Think about what that does to a person, watching your 7 brothers, one by one, get announced as global ambassadors for fashion empires while you're the one the industry overlooks. Not because you lack talent. Not because you lack presence. But because the fashion world has a very specific template for what a fashion idol looks like, and a muscular, dark concept rapper with streetwear aesthetics and aggressive stage energy doesn't fit the mold. The fashion industry wanted ethereal, androgynous, delicate. And Changbin is none of those things. He's powerful, compact, intense. His stage persona is fire and fury, deep, growling rap deliveries layered over beats he helped produce, eyes locked on the camera like he's daring it to blink first. Off stage, he's impossibly soft, affectionate, funny, emotionally intelligent in a way that catches people off guard. But the fashion world doesn't see the offstage Changbin. It sees the brand image. And for years, the brand image didn't match what luxury houses thought they wanted. Until Autry. February 27, 2026. The American footwear and lifestyle brand founded on 1980s heritage sneaker culture, built on the philosophy that authenticity isn't a marketing strategy, it's an identity, did something no other brand in Changbin's career had done. They didn't just sign him. They made him their first ever global brand ambassador. First. Ever. Not the second. Not one of many. The inaugural face of a brand that had never given that title to any human being on earth before CEO Changbin from Yongin, South Korea. Roberta Benalia, Autry's executive chairwoman, said Changbin's artistic integrity and confidence made him a natural fit for the brand's DNA. They saw what the luxury houses had missed, that Changbin's energy isn't wrong for fashion. Fashion's definition of right was too narrow. The Spring-Summer 2026 campaign featured him in a collegiate-inspired aesthetic, relaxed layering, quiet confidence, effortless cool, built around the super vintage medalist sneaker and the high-tech hyperway model. Rolling Stone UK covered it. Fashion outlets praised the alignment between artist and brand, both grounded in heritage, both unafraid to innovate, both built on the principle that you don't perform authenticity. You live it. That's the full arc. A man who had his clothes sold behind his back by a brand that didn't respect him enough to ask permission, who waited while 7 of his brothers got luxury deals, who was overlooked by an industry that couldn't see past its own template, became the founding face of a brand that chose him precisely because he refused to be anything other than himself. And the SLBS scandal? It didn't break him. It sharpened his story. Because every time someone tries to reduce Stray Kids members to products, to garments to be auctioned, to bodies to be monetized, to names to be left out of captions, there's a Changbin somewhere in the background, writing another verse about what it means to own your own identity. But if Changbin's story is about being overlooked by the fashion world and eventually being chosen for exactly who he is, the next member's journey asks an entirely different question. What happens when you're so quiet, so gentle, so seemingly invisible that nobody expects you to walk into a Burberry campaign and remind everyone that silence can be louder than any runway? Number 3. Seungmin, the vocal perfectionist who let British heritage fall in love with his quiet elegance. March 1, 2024. Paris Fashion Week. The venue for Loewe's Fall/Winter 2024 Women's Runway show is lined with the quiet, evocative still-life paintings of American artist Albert York. The room is packed with the kind of fashion gatekeepers who pride themselves on being unshakable, unimpressed, and deeply critical of outsiders entering their artistic sanctuaries. And then Kim Seungmin walks in. Stray Kids' main vocalist, a man who, for the longest time, seemed completely uninterested in the frantic vanity of the fashion industry, arrives wearing a tactile, plush green top by Loewe, accented with an intricate plume of cascading bows falling from the collar, paired effortlessly with clean jeans and sneakers. It is whimsical, tactile, understated, and completely hypnotic. In a single morning, social media across Asia and Europe exploded. He wasn't trying to outglam anyone. He wasn't playing the brooding bad boy archetype that high fashion often demands from male idols. He walked in as himself, composed, grounded, almost scholarly in his poise, and the fashion world was completely blindsided. Because for years, Seungmin had been the member everyone wrongfully assumed was too ordinary for high fashion. While Hyunjin radiated dramatic opulence and Felix broke boundaries with ethereal androgyny, Seungmin was the guy with the practice notebook. The perfectionist. The kid from Seoul who once dreamed of being a professional baseball pitcher before shifting all of that intense, mechanical discipline into music. He placed second in JYP's 13th open audition in 2017, but unlike many idols who ease into their fame once they debut, Seungmin did the unthinkable. He kept taking private vocal lessons outside the company for years, filling dozens of journals with notes on breath control, vocal mechanics, and resonance. He was the quiet foundation, the vocal backbone of Stray Kids' explosive discography, known fondly to fans as the disciplined dandy boy or the lovable puppy who preferred staying in practice rooms over chasing luxury brand deals. And because he was reserved and rarely chased the spotlight for the sake of attention, critics in the fashion sphere initially wrote him off as someone without fashion impact. They didn't think his clean, classic, almost academic aesthetic could command a global fashion house. But high fashion, at its most refined level, doesn't always want loud noise. Sometimes it seeks timeless depth. And that's exactly why Daniel Lee, the visionary chief creative officer of Burberry, set his sights on Seungmin. On June 17, 2025, Burberry made the monumental announcement: Kim Seungmin was officially appointed as a global brand ambassador for the iconic British heritage house. Daniel Lee didn't just issue a routine PR welcome. He explicitly highlighted Seungmin's boundary-breaking passion and his unique ability to bridge traditional heritage with modern, youthful authenticity. Think about the gravity of that choice. Burberry isn't just any brand. It is the quintessential pillar of British luxury, an institution with over 160 years of history built on classic trench coats, equestrian motifs, and refined sartorial discipline. And they chose Seungmin to embody their modern evolution. Fast forward to September 2025 at Perks Field in Kensington Palace Gardens for London Fashion Week, and then February 2026 at Old Billingsgate Market for Burberry's Fall/Winter 2026 show. Seungmin stepped out in a tailored, soot brown, slim-fit suit layered beneath a structured black trench coat. He didn't just attend the show, he dominated it. Independent media data revealed that Seungmin alone generated an astonishing 43% of the entire global media conversation for the Burberry FW26 showcase. One man, sitting quietly in the front row, drove nearly half of the world's press attention for a historic British fashion giant. The same vocalist who was once dismissed as too conventional by industry snobs proved that genuine sophistication doesn't need to scream to be heard. Its power lies in unwavering precision and authentic presence. Seungmin's triumph is a masterclass in staying true to your identity. He didn't morph into a stereotype to appease European fashion houses. He brought his quiet discipline, his intellectual charm, and his classic grace to the table, and made one of the oldest fashion empires in the world adapt to him. But while Seungmin proved that calm elegance can silence an entire room, our next member had to battle an entirely different beast, stepping into a rebellious Italian luxury empire as the youngest in the group, and showing the world what happens when the innocent magne completely shatters every expectation placed upon him. Number 2. I.N. The youngest rebel who tore down his innocent past to conquer Milan couture. Let's talk about the psychological trap of being labeled the eternal baby of a global supergroup. When Stray Kids debuted in March 2018, Yang Jong-in was just 17 years old, a bright-eyed kid from Busan wearing literal dental braces, affectionately dubbed Baby Bread and the Desert Fox for his sharp, fennec fox-like eyes and radiant, innocent smile. For years, the industry put him in a very neat, comfortable box, the sweet, protected magne whose main role was to look cute next to his fiercely rebellious older brothers. But fashion, especially the ruthless world of European couture, does not give out front-row seats or million-dollar contracts for being adorable. If you stay in the box they built for you, the fashion elite will overlook you every single time. And I.N knew it. The turning point began in September 2023, when he landed in Paris for the Alexander McQueen Spring/Summer 2024 show. The crowd waiting outside didn't see the smiling boy with braces anymore. They saw a razor-sharp, sculpted man stepping out of a black car in severe, monochromatic tailoring that looked like it had been carved out of marble. The proportions were daring, the gaze was piercing, and the aura was pure high-fashion menace. The fashion press lost their minds. Critics who had never once paid attention to the youngest member of Stray Kids suddenly started asking, "Who is that?" He returned to Paris for Alexander McQueen's Fall/Winter 2024 show, cementing that his high-fashion magnetism was no fluke, but a deliberate artistic evolution. And then, the ultimate Italian luxury powerhouse came knocking. In January 2025, Bottega Veneta, a brand synonymous with quiet luxury, extraordinary leather craftsmanship, and subtle, untouchable prestige, officially announced I.N as their global brand ambassador. Joining a legendary lineage that includes cinematic icons like Julianne Moore and Michelle Yeoh, I.N wasn't brought in as an idle gimmick, Bottega Veneta explicitly celebrated his cool confidence, his boundary-pushing personal style, and his embodiment of refined modern craftsmanship. When he sat front row at Milan Fashion Week for their showcase, wearing custom textural leather that accentuated his sharp, mature frame, it felt like a declaration of absolute independence. He took every patronizing assumption the fashion world ever made about young K-pop idols, that they are manufactured, submissive, and lacking personal edge, and dismantled them piece by piece on the streets of Paris and Milan. I.N proved that true growth isn't about escaping who you were, but having the courage to evolve into someone the entire world is forced to respect. But as we reach the very top of our countdown, there is one final member whose story completes this entire saga, a lyrical genius who waited until the very last chapter to claim his luxury throne, and in doing so, proved that Stray Kids' fashion takeover was not just a trend, but a complete and total revolution. Number 1, Han, the musical maverick who waited for no one, completing the ultimate luxury sweep. June 15, 2026. The final piece of history falls into place. In an industry where luxury fashion deals are often weaponized as status symbols to pit idols and fandoms against one another, Han Ji-sung, Stray Kids' lyrical genius, rapid-fire ace rapper, and phenomenal vocalist, did something truly legendary. The historic Italian luxury house Tod's officially announced Han as their newest global brand ambassador. For over a century, Tod's has stood for unhurried Italian elegance, effortless sophistication, and impeccable handmade leather craftsmanship. They didn't sign Han to ride a temporary trend. They chose him for his authentic individuality, his raw contemporary vision, and his profound artistic spirit. Just days later, on June 21, 2026, Han made his grand debut at Milan Fashion Week during Tod's men's presentation, stepping into the spotlight in the signature pashmina jacket and red dot sneakers, relaxed, unbothered, and radiating the aura of an artist who knew his worth all along. For years, detractors and impatient commentators kept questioning why Han hadn't rushed into a solo fashion ambassadorship, assuming that someone who spends his days hunched over beat machines in the studio wouldn't care about high fashion. But Han's story wasn't about rushing, it was about destiny. With his appointment, Han completed an unprecedented, historic milestone in music and fashion history. Every single one of the 8 Stray Kids members became a global ambassador for a distinct luxury fashion empire. Bang Chan with Fendi, Lee Know with Gucci, Changbin with Autry, Hyunjin with Versace and Guess, Han with Tod's, Felix with Louis Vuitton, Seungmin with Burberry, and I.N with Bottega Veneta. Think about the sheer poetic justice of this moment. The same group that walked onto the 2024 Met Gala red carpet only to be mocked by photographers shouting robots and hurling the wrong language at them didn't just survive the disrespect. They systematically conquered the very industry that tried to belittle them. 8 men. 8 distinct luxury titans. 0 exceptions. Han's appointment wasn't just a personal victory, it was the final, triumphant exclamation point on Stray Kids' absolute takeover of global fashion. What began on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a display of ignorance, xenophobia, and media arrogance ultimately transformed into one of the greatest cultural power shifts in modern entertainment history. When photographers mocked Stray Kids, when publications erased their names, and when brands attempted to exploit their privacy, Stay and Stray Kids chose a strategy far more lethal than an online feud: undeniable, institutional dominance. The journey of these 8 artists reveals 3 profound truths about modern global culture. Respect is not given, it is commanded. Stray Kids never begged the Western fashion establishment for validation. Instead, each member brought their raw individuality, from Bang Chan's protective leadership and Changbin's grounded authenticity, to Hyunjin and Felix's runway power, Lee Know's precision, Seungmin's quiet dedication, I.N's fearless maturity, and Han's artistic genius, forcing century-old heritage houses to open their doors and rewrite their rules. The power of an unbreakable fandom. Stay proved that when a community unites around accountability, media gatekeepers can no longer hide behind anonymity. By turning every slight into a spotlight, Fans protected the group's dignity while accelerating their global ascendancy. The complete 8-member luxury sweep, Stray Kids became the first group in history where every single member stands as the solo face of a premier global brand. They didn't just break the glass ceiling of the fashion world, they completely took over the building. Thank you for diving into this documentary journey with us. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another episode of our top-tier entertainment and culture stories. Until next time, stay sharp, stay inspired, and remember, your authenticity is your greatest power. Channel out.